So with that, I would like to begin reading the first story that was submitted to us, and after which, of course, Brad, Josh, and I are going to, mostly Brad and Josh, though. As I said, I'm more of the scholar here. We're going to begin analyzing. So before I begin, I would just like to remind you that each of these six stories that I have are indeed real stories that happen to not only real people, but specifically armed Americans, and more specifically members of the United States Concealed Carry Association. Some of you might even recognize these because they may be yours. What I did is on our forum a few days ago, I started a contest asking for these specific types of situations, and I basically said if I won't use any names or anything like that. Um, but if I do use your story, you'll get a free copy of our How to Recognize and Respond to a Potential Threat package, authored by our very own Joshua Pelliser.
Yes, sir.
So if you do recognize your story, stay tuned on the forum because I'll definitely be getting in touch with you. So here we go. This is the very first story. I'm going to read it exactly as the authors posted it. The fall 1976 in San Francisco, California, and this happened in a bar/pool hall. I was 22 years old, a member of the United States Navy, 6'3", 185 pounds, and a white, straight guy waiting for my turn to get on a table where a quarter was placed under the bumper by the pay end of the table. My quarter was the last in line of four. After the three others lost, I picked up my quarter and put it in the slot and dispensed the balls and began to rack them. A large, 5'11", easy 230-pound biker-looking dude objected to my racking the balls, claiming that the quarter I used was his. I was on liberty from my ship and needed to be back on board that evening, so I decided that 25 cents was not worth an argument. I
Good
put both.
deal.
Yep, we're good up to here.
Yeah.
I put both hands up to about shoulder height and shrugged, saying that I was sorry and that he could have his, not my, turn.
Mm.
He did not want the turn playing pool. He just wanted a chance to beat a squid's ass, he said. With that, he pulled out a Crocodile Dundee-sized knife. At least I remember it being that big.
Mm.
Well, we were not allowed to carry weapons, so I started to back away until I backed into the rack that held the pool cues. I grabbed a pool cue, and intended to try to keep him away by holding him off by poking him with the tip of the cue. His buddies were egging him on, and my shipmates had left the establishment.
Which is horrible.
I guess I got the cue moving forward a little bit too fast because it entered his abdomen just above the ribs on his left side and exited just under the floating ribs on his right side.
Whoa.
We were nose to nose when it sunk into both of us that he had just been impaled by the pool cue. Long story short, he dropped the knife. The bar had called the cops at the first sign of trouble. I spent the night and the next day in jail. He suffered only a bruised kidney and 2 dime-sized puncture wounds, one of which had an odd green tattoo scar from the chalk dust. At least I was told later.
Little memento.
Exactly. And to end the story, charges were never filed because witnesses indicated that I gave ground, I tried to defuse the situation, and I had not been drinking. And not only had he been drinking, but he had also had a knife.
Mm-hmm.
I accepted a swap to a vessel on the East Coast about 2 weeks later.
It's not much better over here, actually. But that's a really interesting story, man. Because and my the hats go off really to the subject, the guy who wrote this story. Because I mean, in my mind, he really did everything in such a calm manner. You know, I mean, I think a lot of people would have either overcompensated or been too afraid to act. And I know that, on one hand, he did impale a guy with a pool cue, which in my book gives him like 20 extra badass points. But still, it's like, you got to think about this. I mean, this is something that, hearing the story really makes me wonder, at what point do you accept that someone's trying to kill you? If someone pulls out a knife and they're saying they want to hurt you, if that guy's not a surgeon, I'm going to assume that he's going to accidentally kill me, even if he doesn't want to, Yeah. And if I ever feel like my life is threatened, I have, in my mind, every right in the world to protect my life by threatening the life of the person across from me, a person who's threatening mine. So, and this is something that I kind of went back and forth on a few times whenever I was, especially when I was studying Kung Fu, because some of the techniques we learned in Kung Fu, and in the other martial arts courses that I went through as well, some of the techniques you learn quickly that you can't kill somebody with them. You know, and it's really, I mean, human life is pretty delicate. It's really easy to take a life. It's really easy to not take a life. But the decision has to be there. And I kind of wondered for about a year, I think, I was kind of back and forth in this subject, whether or not I'd be able to kill somebody if they threatened my life. And of course, the question never really gets answered unless you have to kill somebody, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't want that to happen. So it's one of those things where it's like you almost can never stop wondering unless a situation happens and you have to do it. And you never want that to be the case. So I have, for some reason, I have extremely vivid dreams, and I always have had very, very, very vivid dreams. And I always act as if I normally would in real life. I act that way in my dreams. And about a year after I was kind of thinking about this, I started having dreams where someone would threaten me, and I took a couple people's lives in my dream, and I didn't feel bad about it. I was like, he tried to kill me, so I killed him, you know. And I think after that point, I felt really comfortable knowing or thinking that if someone did threaten my life or the life of the person near me, if I had a situation in which I had to take someone's life, I would have, you know. And it's just crazy. If someone pulled a knife on me, you know, I would try to get away and try to be like, look, let's just maybe I may try to talk, I may not try to talk, I may just leave, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And even I've been trained to handle people who have knives. I've been trained to fight people who have knives, and I feel fairly confident that I can disarm somebody who's got a knife. I mean, I've done it for, like I said, I studied for 8 hours a day, 6 days a week for 3 years, and then I had 3 more years of studying part time in my martial arts training. So I did a whole lot of training, and the knife attack was the big one that everyone wanted, you know, because how do you train against a gun attack, you know?
Right.
What they said is give them what they want unless they try to hurt somebody, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and that's pretty much it. So you know, it's just interesting to hear that this person had, you know, they pulled a cue out, they had a weapon in their hands, and even in my mind, I mean, it may be right or wrong, but in my mind, I probably would have aimed it in a place that would have possibly done terminal damage to them, you know, because they have a knife and they're coming at me with the knife, you know. And if I had time to think about it, maybe I wouldn't. But if it was just a reaction, like I said, my hat really goes off to the person who wrote the story because they reacted in such a calm manner and was able to get out of it really with just phenomenal results. I mean, no one got hurt except the person who probably should have gotten hurt in the first place. All he had to do was spend a night and a half in jail, a day and a half in jail, and then, you know, transferred after that. So there was a lot of respect goes out to the guy who handles this properly in my book.
Absolutely. I was going to ask you. I mean, it definitely. I mean, obviously, you know, nobody died, and the only
Mm-hmm.
person who got hurt was the attacker. So, I mean, that's a good outcome. Nobody can argue that. But is there anything? I mean, because to me, it's like, you know, he handled it perfectly.
Yep.
Um, but do you see anything that he could have done better to maybe, you know, like I mean, this guy obviously was looking for a fight. He admitted all he
Mm-hmm.
wanted to do was, you know, I guess prove his dominance by beating up a guy who was in the Navy.
Right.
And if this is what year was that? 76?
76.
Yeah, maybe he was one of these people who hates military people, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, is there anything that he could have done from the very first second when the guy came up and said, "Hey, you know, that's my quarter or whatever."
Well, yeah, there are a few things that you could have done, but they're kind of advanced techniques, and it wouldn't necessarily have guaranteed, you know, some kind of a difference in outcome, really.
Mhm.
But psychologically, I've been in situations that sort of similar to this, where I've never had to defend myself because I use neurolinguistic programming techniques to get out of them.
Hmm.
So neurolinguistic programming is basically the idea that you program someone's brain by the way you're talking, and
Okay.
hypnosis is a form of NLP as well. And I studied a bit of NLP and learned some techniques through NLP, and then kind of added them on to body language, positive, negative, dominant, and submissive body language techniques. And I think I covered the difference between positive, negative, and dominant and submissive body language in the book, and how to recognize and respond to a potential threat. But to kind of give you the gist, one thing you can do, during the beginning, if you face someone with your body or alter the way you're acting because someone else acts dominant in a situation, you effectively give them all the power in the situation. So if he hadn't done that, then it maybe, now this is a big maybe, I'm not saying it would have happened for sure, because this guy could have really, if you look at it this way, the way I'm picturing the bar, the guy was cornered. All the other guy's friends were there. All he had was a pool cue behind him, a pool cue rack, and the other guy had a knife, and he was cornering him, coming at him. In that situation, when you corner an animal, you're going to get the teeth, always.
Mm-hmm.
It's just always going to happen. So I don't know, and that once you got past that breaking point where the guy was actually pulled out the knife and actually went at him, I think that there was nothing really else he could have done. But if he had recognized it a little bit earlier that this guy had this, maybe had recognized the potential overcompensated dominant body language from this guy instead of being, most likely was a conditioned white, most likely. I'm guessing. I don't. Like I said, I'm not this guy, and I wasn't there. But the way I'm picturing it is probably a conditioned white in this bar because he was younger and he didn't really. Just like we all learned that way. We had to learn to pay more attention because of situations like this. So it's completely valid, but I'm assuming that he wasn't really paying as much close of attention to everybody. One thing you can do, and I'll probably highlight this throughout the rest of these stories as well because it's a really amazing technique.
Mm-hmm.
It's a technique that I used to use to diffuse people with combative dynamics, sevens, right? And one of the things that you can do is you use what's called neutral body language. So instead of giving them negative body language, which is where you turn your back to them pretty much and look over your shoulder to talk to them, which is in some ways, if you take power away from somebody by giving them negative body language, then that could actually cause an attack. Because, especially in a group where everyone's watching.
Mm-hmm.
If everyone's there and all his friends are there, it's an ego thing, and you turn your back to him, that means that you don't think he's threatening, and he wants to seem threatening, so that's not going to work out. He'll probably instigate an attack. If you face him directly, then you're also threatening him. You're saying basically, come on, and that's a challenge. So either way, if you turn away or face him, you're still going to probably instigate some kind of an attack, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you turn your shoulder to him halfway and sort of lean toward him a little bit and begin to engage everybody in the group instead of just him, and what I'm guessing is this guy, he looked just at the guy who was trying to attack him, just at the guy who was yelling at him, and answered only this guy. And in doing that, he gave just this one person all the power to say yes or no, to have the floor, all of that. So instead of doing that, if he addressed everybody all at once, and the way you do that is you separate eye contact. So you give this guy just the same amount of eye contact as you gave everybody else that was standing there, And if he said the same thing, like, "Hey man, no problem. I had no idea. You guys feel free to play. I'll just chill, no problem." And then if then still he came at him, like I said, it's a big maybe. He may have not cared, but it probably would have increased his chances of being able to walk out of there without anything happening, probably by 100%. Probably would have doubled his chances of being able to walk out. But again, who knows in a situation like this? So the shoulder sort of neutral body language kind of technique, and then diffusing his power by giving eye contact to everybody allows basically for everyone else to feel like you're equally distributing the tension amongst everyone in the room, which means that you have the power to do that, which means that you are a leader.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's a really rare quality, so I think that it would really throw a lot of people off. And I've been in situations similar to this where I've had an entire frat house of guys try to beat me up at the same time. And I used what's called a pattern interrupt to calm everybody down and to get off of this third story of a flight of stairs on the fire escape, which is where I was, and everyone was on the fire escape too, all ready to kick my ass and probably throw me off the edge. They were mad. They were frat guys. They were just mad because I was there at the party. And I probably shouldn't have been there anyway, really. So that's my fault. But ultimately, I used a pattern interrupt, which I'll probably get into a little bit later on in some of these other stories. And there are techniques like that you can use that really do throw people off. One of the sort of, not fathers, but one of the major players in the NLP circle for neurolinguistic programming, he also did a whole lot of, which is not what I'm talking about now, but a lot of illusion. He was an illusionist. He did a lot of illusions, sort of magic tricks sort of things. There's a guy named Darren Brown. Darren Brown was, he's got shows in England about how he does things basically through using NLP. or in code reading techniques and things like that, and instant rapport building techniques to be able to get people to do things they wouldn't normally do. And there's a story about him, how he was attacked once at gunpoint on the street, and he used a series of pattern interrupts, and the guy who attacked him started crying, put his gun away. And this is the kind of power that he has. Man, I don't know if I would have done that if I were him. I would just would have gave the guy whatever he wanted, because it's kind of risky to start throwing out NLP patterns and techniques like that in a situation where someone's got a gun on you. But it ended up where the guy broke down and started crying because Darren was just so good at basically reading people and knowing how to play people's weaknesses. There is that. You can gain that ability. That's almost like a superhuman, almost like it's George Lucas-esque.
Yeah.
These are not the droids you're looking for. So, and that's kind of how it seems. And these sort of Jedi mind tricks, and to some extent they're based off of, the Jedi mind tricks were based off of real things, real things that people could actually do. So, sort of anything being really superhuman, sort of this guy being superhuman, or being hyper aware, or being a very well informed armed citizen, like of course you who are listening to this right now, sort of doing any of that. I think he did a fantastic job of getting out of that without causing minimal damage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love the shoulder turning tip. That's brilliant.
It works. I don't, it's crazy how well it works too. I've had a lot of situations in which just turning my shoulder to somebody and leaning toward them a little bit, because only your friends will stand at you like that, and so it automatically puts somebody into a pattern of acting like you're their friend.
Huh.
It's a completely subconscious thing, especially if you can get shoulder to shoulder with them, where you're not facing them, you're both facing the same direction. That's a really powerful place to be, because you're directing them at that point. And at some point maybe we'll do a demonstration of this. Maybe we'll shoot some videos or something and do a demonstration of some of these techniques at some point in the future. I think people would get a kick out of it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I got to say one thing really fast, and that's I read the story once where this guy was being hunted by this pack of 3 guys, and it was really late at night, and 2 of the people, the hunting party was sitting at a campfire, and 2 of them were sleeping, and the guy who was on watch was kind of drifting. And this guy who was being hunted had sidled up next to this guy who was drifting and sat next to him, shoulder to shoulder, exactly like you're saying. And he had a 30-second conversation with him before the guy realized what was going on. And I didn't get it at the time, but I remember making the connection that would definitely be a very non-threatening way to approach someone like that.
Yeah, and for some reason, we've had so many patterns in our heads, just throughout our entire lives, where the only people who will give us body language like that are our friends. And so instead of thinking, instead of the natural thought being, this guy's faking it, our natural thought process is, this guy must be my friend, and it's all subconscious. So we don't have any control over it, logically or consciously. It all happens subconsciously and goes straight to our emotions. And that pattern interrupt will work for a while, but it will wear off, and you better believe that. When it wears off, you better be gone, because those things will last for, typically, they can last, if you keep them going, you can keep them going for long periods of time, like hours. But if you did that one thing, you'd have just enough time to probably get out of the bar before they realize that they didn't get to kick your ass, and they really want to. You know what I mean? So, but again, that's something that I'm sure we'll talk about, and that could be an entire book just on, pattern interrupt NLP techniques. So.